Shalom. Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rachahakwarash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. News and prophecy linking to things happening worldwide to the Holy Scriptures, so that the faithful elect, the remnant of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, can know and understand that all of these things that are happening are a direct result of biblical prophecy, which were foretold by the prophets, all right, which have been reborn into the earth in these latter days to further expound on these things, linking them, all right, to current events. As the scriptures say in the book of Habakkuk, all right, he was ordered to write the vision and make it plain upon tables so that he that runneth may read it, all right, and basically run to these different platforms, also going to the highways and the byways and give understanding to the elect, okay? Because all of the visions that our forefathers received through the Holy Spirit, okay, are ultimately being fulfilled in these times. As a matter of fact, when you get the book of, I believe it's 1 Peter 2, boom. All right, 2 Peter's the first chapter, and we'll go to the 20th verse. It says, above all, you must realize that no prophecy in the scripture ever came from the prophet's own understanding or from human initiative. No, those prophets were moved by the Holy Spirit and they spake from the Most High. All right. And all of these things, all right, are faithful and true. As a matter of fact, let's type that in as well. Okay. Because we have a sure word of prophecy. All right. So understand that everything that is happening in the planet Earth is a direct result of what the Lord foretold. So don't be moved. Don't be offended. Although a lot of these things require faith, you know, some of them are going to require loss of particular, you know, things in the world. It's going to require you to sacrifice particular things. A lot of it is going to pull at your ego. But, all right, know and understand that is a part of your sacrifice, as we were born into the earth in these latter days to walk the path of the straight gate. Everybody is playing their role. We have to play ours as we walk through the Lord's determination. This is what he has determined. Revelation 22:6, and he said unto me, these sayings are faithful and true. See, these sayings are faithful and true. And the Lord God of the holy prophets sent his only angel to show unto his servants the things which must be shortly done. So these things are faithful and true. Okay. Yahweh Shai is faithful and true. See? So again, end time prophecy, end time vibes. All right. We're living at the end of Esau's world. There's a lot of things happening. And it's like the next day you look up is something else. So today we're going to deal with this situation with Iran and how basically the powers that be are trying to force, you know, a third world war, which is prophecy. All right. But it's not going to happen until particular prophecies come to pass, because the MOTB has to come to pass before World War III fully breaks out, which we see that infrastructure being set up. We see the technocracy being, you know, ultimately brought in under the guise of making America great again. You're starting to see a technocracy be set up over here in the United States, all right, which is going to be centered around a scenario where you have no civil liberties, you have no rights. Things are going to get so bad that they're going to have to surveil you from the inside, which is the MOTB, All right, which around that time there's going to be civil unrest. Okay, nation against nation, people against people, class wars, sex wars, gender wars, race wars. Okay, class war, all of these various different. It's not going to just be one war. It's going to be, people are going to be at each other's necks. These are the times that are coming ahead. As we look all over the earth, we see nothing but rebellions against governments. Okay, just like what was going on in Iran. Okay, but ultimately all of these things are going to culminate into World War III, as we'll get into, as the three unclean frogs are pretty much setting themselves, all right, in position to fulfill prophecy, as we will show you. Okay, and we saw a recent Trump, raid Venezuela. Okay, and there's a lot behind that, which a lot of those moves are backfiring. The bad, West, the American dominance is pretty much on it's waning with the loss of allies, as we'll show you. And immediately after Venezuela, he started to talk about taking Greenland. Then he started to talk about going into Iran, which all of these moves are going to have some very, very, very interesting consequences that are tied to biblical prophecy. All right. So we saw Trump saying he's going to go. All right. Because what did we see in Iran? We saw a country with its own issues, the same way Babylon has issues, the same way Babylonians, Americans have complaints against their government. That was going on in Iran. All right. And what America does is, because they want control of particular assets and control of the Gulf of Hormuz via Israel, the small hat, what they do is use their media to basically say, this is too much. They're killing their protesters. We need to go over there and bring peace, which you haven't brought peace to your own damn citizens. What makes you think that this devil is going to go to Iran after his history and set up peace? So we know that the devil is up to no good. And even particular outlets and people in Iran started to call out that America and, Israel via the Mossad was responsible for a lot, because what started as peaceful protest, all right, turned violent. Okay. And there was a lot of propaganda being, fed to the Western, through the Western media. And this is what they do. They pretty much use their media to take the high moral ground and say, we need to go over to this particular country and set up peace. Neither keep it at home. You see, and this is ultimately the one of the major falls of the Roman Empire. They had their hands in too many conflicts. Their military was spread too thin. And basically with this talking point of striking Iran, Iran immediately barked back and said, you come over here with your BS. Okay, you will be met with force. Okay, the Iranian, the powers that be in Iran shut off the internet so that certain things weren't being reported. The West, all right, using Elon Musk Starlink, tried to go over there and give them internet usage, and Iran had the technology to counteract it. So what the West found out as they were going to try to do their usual over in Iran is that they weren't ready. That's basically what happened. But Trump is trying to, present this as he convinced himself not to strike Iran. All right, because they were using the Western media to say protesters were getting slaughtered by the thousands. And even people in Iran were coming out like, that's a lie. So it's a bunch of propaganda. But as Esau Edom, thought he was just going to go over into Iran and, take over, and he's got his chest poked out. The Lord ultimately put a spirit on him to fold it back. Now, eventually they are going to go into Iran. Eventually there will be a World War III, but there's particular things that have to happen first. Just like in the scriptures dealing with Pharaoh, the Lord has sometimes hardened Pharaoh's heart. All right. There was also points where he put a spirit on Pharaoh to chill. Okay. And this is ultimately what's happening now. Okay. Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hands of Yahweh, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he wilt. Okay. So the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. You see that? And basically that's what happened here with this situation in Iran. All right. This devil found out that ultimately he wasn't ready. Even Israel came to the conclusion, okay, well, let's chill. Let's wait. Okay. Because basically this will cause a major regional conflict. Okay. A lot of the bases that America has in these particular regions where Iran could strike would be totally destroyed. Okay. And even, Turkey and certain Arab countries, as you can see here, the reasons that, the real reason that America decided to pull back on this whole Iran, because really what they want is the control of a particular, I believe the Gulf of Hormuz, as we'll show you. That's really what they want. And you have to understand, Israel, since the 80s, has been saying Iran has weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. We've been seeing this same propaganda. They did it with Iraq. They've played the same card over the years, basically used their media to say that this government is being oppressive to its people. We need to go, play savior. But really they have resources and control in mind and regime change. And the thing is, talking about a regime change in Iran, okay, then what? You think you're just gonna stop these people from being Muslims and like then what? What's the goal? After all of these years of this regime ruling, you think you just go over there and set up shop? Okay. And over the year, there was a point where they did some wickedness over there, and the women were able to then start wearing mini skirts. So Esau Edom is doing his usual, spreading his wine throughout the four corners of the earth, taking resources. But we're living at a time now where, basically he's being met with opposition that he's not used to, because Iran is not Venezuela. Okay. So regional allies even discourage a military strike in Iran. All right. Major U.S. regional partners such as Gulf of Arab states and Turkey warned that a direct U.S. attack on Iran could lead to major regional conflict. Their message reportedly pushed the administration to hold back. Israel, often cited as a key ally with U.S. in conflict with Iran, also communicated concerns that a U.S. strike without adequate preparation or census, all right, wouldn't achieve its strategic goals, and it could backfire. Because again, they brought their Starlink over there to give the people internet, where the leaders took the internet away, and basically Iran had a counter to that because they've been dealing with Russia with, different defense systems. So America found out, they effed around and found out real quick that they weren't ready, but they're trying to, use their media to say, well, Trump is trying to use the media to say, I convinced myself not to strike Iran. Okay. And again, this will be a big risk in a region away from your home. Yeah, you got the sword, but as you're abroad, okay, you're not in your backyard. So eventually you could lose a lot of men. Okay. You could basically put yourself in position to where your move is going to work against you. And pretty much all of the moves that Esau is going to make going forward, as he looks at it as dominance and winning, they're going to work against him. Iran has a large and capable military, including ballistic missiles and proxy forces throughout the region. Any attack on leadership or core infrastructure could be seen as a declaration of war and prompt direct Iranian attacks on U.S. bases and regional partners. Risk of a wider regional war, including threats to oil checkpoints like the Strait of Hormuz. All right. And we're going to deal with that at some point in this lesson. So basically, America avoided, all right, striking Iran at this point and invading, because basically they're not fully ready. Okay. So ultimately, the Lord put a spirit on Babylon to chill. Okay, but we know as the devil, you know, moves forward, he's gonna potentially do it. As U.S. forces move into position for a potential attack on Iran, evidence that the Iranians possesses unconventional weapons emerges. See, and why can't they have weapons if you have them? Okay, but we'll get into this. Let's start here. Which this is days before Trump, you know, finally decided not to, but there's some good information in this video. And then we will move forward with a few other videos, and hopefully you brothers and sisters are edified, okay? Because Babylon, ultimately the goal, all right, through the Heavenly Father, is that these weaker nations that, you know, Babylon, you know, through the NATO alliance and the EU was able to just push around. We're living in the times where the allies of Babylon the Great aren't fully, you know, you know, invested in this beast system like they used to be. Okay, they're starting, some of these countries are starting to look out for their own interests. They're making alliances with other countries that go against what America wants, and we're living in beautiful times, and end time prophecies are being prepared. Joel 3:9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, for there will I sit to judge the heathen round about. So there is going to be a world war. Okay, but things can't happen until the said measure of the other be fulfilled. So everything has to happen decently in order according to prophecy. World War III can't break out before civil unrest in Babylon and the MOTB system is set up. Okay, now we'll go here.
When Washington wants to sell a war, it usually starts the same way. First, it reframes a country's pain into a morality play. Then it reframes that country's sovereignty into bad behavior. And then it reframes foreign pressure into help. After that, any unrest that follows gets packaged as the people rising up, while the state is told it has no right to restore order, no right to defend itself, and no right to exist unless it obeys the empire. That is exactly what this moment feels like. Iran under an intense, multi-layered siege, and Donald Trump leaning into language and posture that signal he is prepared to turn that siege into open war, while presenting himself as some kind of savior. And it is happening as the so-called protest narrative begins to lose steam, not because the Iranian state is afraid of its people, but because the spectacle has limits when reality sets in. Iran is not a blank canvas for foreign fantasies. It is a sovereign nation with institutions, a national identity forged through decades of pressure, and a population that has seen this movie before, where outside powers exploit economic strain, amplify chaos, and then claim moral authority to intervene. The more the unrest collapses as a credible revolution story, the more the warmongers lean into escalation, because their preferred outcome was never reform, it was rupture. Iranians on the street rejects any revolution suggestion.
And Trump was using his Western media to say the people over in Iran were calling for him to come help. All right, you ask the people in Iran, you know, I don't even consider him a human. All right, they don't like the people from Iran was not calling for the U.S. to. They know the history of the U.S. and what you've done and what you are capable of doing. See, and what makes you think that what you're doing to your own citizens, you won't go over there and do even worse to those citizens? So yeah, the people may have had particular, you know, gripes against their government. I mean, that's happening worldwide. But nobody's calling for Babylon the Great to come and take over, because they know what it would lead to. He said, look, I'm protesting, but if the goal is to open a path for the filth, the Zionists, the small hats, and their pups to step in, then I'm not a protester. See that?
But سکتو داشت جا باز بشه نه ما هرچی هم با هم دیگه مشکل داشته باشیم ولی این که بخواید اینجا قطع علم کنید نه ما هستیم جنوب پایین کشور می‌داریم
کشوری به ایران من نمیتونه دست بزنه
یا فرید خوردن یا کلا از جاهای دیگه اومدن ما مردم تهرانیم و باشون وایسادیم
کسی که از این خاک از این مردم باشه آرامش مردمش رو هم نمیزنه
You can pause it and read what they say. I'm not going to read all that shit. So basically, they're protesting particular happenings. They want things to change, right? But they're not for Babylon coming and intervening like the West was trying to push. That they're crying for Trump to come help. See? And then the U.S. media, the first 500 protesters died. Then it went into 12,000 protesters died. And it was like, okay. And then that narrative stopped working. And, what America found out as they were trying to go set up shop is that, okay, Iran is more prepared than we thought. Okay? You can watch the video. All right, you see the title of the video. You can look it up. Let's jump.
Alongside thousands of arrests. That level of bloodshed is not a talking point. It is a national wound. But the Western framing tries to weaponize that wound. It turns tragedy into a pretext. Look how unstable Iran is. Now is the moment to finish it. That is not solidarity with Iranian lives. That is opportunism. If they truly cared about Iranian lives, they would stop fanning conflict. Wow. And stop turning every internal crisis into a launch pad for regime change fantasies. War criminal Benjamin Netanyahu lashed on this to lie more about the Iranian people.
ישראל עוקבת בדריכות על הנעשה באיראן. הפגנות למען החירות התפשטו ברחבי המדינה. העם בישראל, העולם כולו, משתאה מול הגבורה האדירה של אזרחי איראן. ישראל תומכת במאבקם לחופש ומגן...
These people don't give a damn about the citizens of Iran. Hell, the citizens over in Israel are protesting against you. Okay? The citizens over here in Babylon are protesting against you. Y'all all have your own internal issues, but you feel as though you've been anointed to go and solve conflicts worldwide so that you can go over there. All right. And we know what the scriptures say about this guy. Let's get the book of Sirach chapter 12. All right, Sirach chapter 12 and 16. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. Like he's gonna get over there to Iran and then set up a situation where everything is gonna work in the interest of the common people. Look at the common people over here. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. If adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first. I want to come help. I want to come restore order. Look at what's happening over there. And though he pretend to help thee, yet he will undermine thee. He will shake his head and clap his hand and whisper much and change his countenance. And that's exactly what this devil was on his way to do. And he's still going to try. All right, but let's go back here.
בתקיפות את מעשי הטבח ההמוני באזרחים חפים מפשע. כולנו תקווה שהאומה הפרסית תשתחרר מקרוב מעול העריצות, וכשיום זה יגיע, ישראל ואיראן יחזרו להיות שותפות נאמנות בבניית עתיד של שגשוג ושלום לשני העמים.
The hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore when you look at Trump's posture at home. In the United States, massive domestic protests have erupted over federal brutality and immigration enforcement. Americans have marched in multiple cities, demanding accountability.
This is wrong. What's happening in this country is wrong, and it has to end.
Denouncing what they describe as terror and abuse of power, and confronting an aggressive federal apparatus. Trump's political ecosystem has been accused of escalating crackdowns while dismissing or smearing protesters at home. Yet the same man points at Iran and claims he must intervene to save people from repression. You can't preach freedom abroad while a large segment of your own population is on the streets accusing your administration of violence, impunity, and abuse.
Yeah, he's going to go to Iran to basically uplift the protesters, but over here he's sicking ice on their ass and shooting them in the head and basically sending a message that basically any form of rebellion is going to end in you being detained or taken out. It's hypocrisy, man. Let's get that scripture. The joy of the hypocrite, all right, is but for a moment. See that? But these things must happen. All right. Job 20:5. Okay. 20:4. Knowest this not, since the days of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. See? Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach into the clouds, and this is where this devil was at in his pride. Okay? Yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. See? Ultimately, he's going to be taken down, man, because he's of the opinion he, all right, should have full rule and jurisdiction of everything going into this NWO. And the elites of these different countries are like, hell no. So they're not going to agree. They're not going to agree at all. This is the book of Job. Okay. 22:8. You probably think the land belongs to the powerful and only the privileged have right to it. See that? This is how Esau Edom works, man. Okay? The elites of Esau Edom are operating in a fashion that ultimately is going to lead to their demise, man. And everybody has figured out their playbook.
That isn't moral leadership. That is projection. This is where the phrase America First becomes a kind of punchline. Trump postures as a nationalist, but his nationalism is selective. It becomes a flag to wave domestically, while he simultaneously seeks to detonate wars abroad for political leverage. If America were truly first, the priority would be addressing domestic fractures, restoring public trust, and confronting the failures that have put Americans in the streets protesting federal power. Instead, he redirects outward because foreign enemies are convenient. They let him turn internal chaos into external theater. They let him dress up political survival as strength. You also cannot separate this moment from the post-2025 reality. Iran is not being threatened in a vacuum. Iran has already endured direct aggression and a dangerous cycle of escalation, including a major war with Israel. That war did not just damage infrastructure, it deepened the logic of deterrence. Every sovereign state that survives a major attack rebuilds its defenses. It repairs what was hit, restores readiness, and sends a message. Do not miscalculate. Iran's rebuilding of military capability after that conflict is not a sign of evil intent. It is the most basic, predictable behavior of any state that refuses to be conquered.
This is what he's done throughout the four corners of the earth. He did it to the Native Americans. He attacks, and then them retaliating is seen as a threat. See?
That's why Trump's declaration posture, his signaling, his threats, his constant suggestion of force reason in Tehran, not as talk, but as preparation. It is understood as the next phase of a long campaign. Sanctions, sabotage, assassinations, psychological operations, and then, when the target refuses to collapse, direct military coercion.
That's it.
That is the imperial script, and Iran has lived through it long enough to recognize the pattern before the final page is turned. Now, let's talk about the military menu Trump likely imagines, because this is where American arrogance usually hides behind technology. It is always the same set of ideas. Precision airstrikes, cruise missiles launched from ships, drones conducting persistent pressure, cyber operations aimed at disrupting command and control and infrastructure, and the threat of special forces raids or broader ground action. These options get discussed in Washington as if war is a spreadsheet problem, inputs, outputs, risk tolerances. But Iran is not a shooting gallery, and the Middle East is not a laboratory. Every limited strike carries escalation risk because Iran is not a passive target that absorbs humiliation and says thank you. And the deeper problem is structural. The U.S. has placed a wide, exposed footprint across the region. Bases, personnel, logistics hubs, naval assets spread across multiple countries. Washington likes to talk like it controls escalation, but that belief collapses when you remember how many vulnerable nodes exist and how many actors can be pulled into a regional crisis. The U.S. can strike Iran, but it cannot strike Iran without inviting consequences that ripple across an entire theater. From my perspective, the real purpose of Iran's deterrent is not conquest. It is prevention. It is to make the price of attacking Iran so high that the attacker reconsiders. Iran's missile force, drone capabilities, air defenses, cyber capacity, and naval asymmetric doctrine are designed for one thing: to deny the fantasy of a clean, painless U.S. victory. Iran's message is simple. If you open this door, you don't get to choose what comes through it. This is why threats against Iran are so reckless. Iran has the capacity to respond in ways that are not symbolic. The region is full of strategic targets, military facilities, critical infrastructure, shipping lanes, and high-value assets that would become vulnerable in any large-scale conflict. Even if Washington imagines it can suppress Iranian response, the realities of geography, dispersal, and asymmetric capacity make that confidence dangerous. Iran does not need to match America in global projection. It needs to impose localized costs that shatter the attacker's political will and expose the fragility of their regional posture. And here is where Israel's role becomes central, because Trump's posture toward Iran rarely exists without Zionist pressure and alignment. Israel has its own incentives to keep Iran as the eternal existential threat.
Yep. So there's interest that, of course, we know the tiny top has over there. Now, real quick, let's jump to this video here. Okay. Let's listen to a little bit of this one. Let's see here.
Terms that are much more favorable to the United States.
It says Iran is next. Venezuela was never about oil.
Even though there is a lot of pushback from some media saying, this is not lawful, right? This is not allowed. The president shouldn't be doing this. The truth is, international law doesn't mean anything without a nation's ability to enforce them. If you can't enforce the law, all you can do is just condemn them. Okay then. So then the question is, well, if this is how the world works right now, then what might happen next?
Because a lot of people was asking, you know, why didn't Russia and Iran do something about what happened in Venezuela? All right. Well, now is not the time, because, you know, basically that's one of their allies. China, you know, Russia, you know, have interest over there. And, you know, people were looking at them like, y'all just gonna let them do your homie like that in Venezuela? You know, while they condemned it in the newspapers, you didn't really see anything being done. All right. But we're living in the times where moves are being made. Something is going to be done, because what is the goal ultimately that the Lord has for this place? Jeremiah 50:9, for I will raise up. All right. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. And the north country represents Russia. And as you can see, it says an assembly of great nations. That's because, pursuant to the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, okay, when it talks about Gog and Magog, which is, you know, Russia getting, you know, Gog, all right, of Magog, all right, because Gog is of the land of Magog, you see. And as you can see here, that's Russia. When you look up an ancient, all right, map, you can see that Gog, all right, or Magog is pretty much the territory of the ancient Japhetic people, which these lands have been conquered by Edomites. See? And this is the confusion a lot of people get when they read end time prophecy. They're thinking that it's speaking of Japhet, all right, but it's speaking of the Edomite. Even the term Ashkenazi Jew, Ashkenaz is one of the sons of Japhet, but they're proclaiming to be, all right, Jews. You cannot be Japhetic and Shemitic all in one. Basically, they're saying that they're Jews from the land, all right, of Ashkenaz, which is Germany, Poland, and the different regions that these Edomites took. They're not proclaiming to be of the seed of Japhet. They're proclaiming to be of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which they're not. They're the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Anyway, we have lessons going into that to clear up that confusion. But as you can see here, the Lord would galvanize Russia in the latter days, in various different countries, including Persia, which is Iran, will be aligned with them, okay, to come up against the small hat and the West, which we have lessons going into this topic. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, which is Turkey, and all his bands in the house of Togarmah. All right, in the north quarter, this is all Turkey and all his bands, and with many people with him. See that? Be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So the Lord is using Russia in the latter days to be a guard to particular nations that would have never stood up to Babylon the Great. We're witnessing in these times, all right, great things happening. All right, so let's go back here and listen to this.
What I'm about to explain is not the official policy, but it is a very common working theory in certain geopolitical circles, and once you understand it, a lot of recent events will hopefully start to make a lot more sense. And the theory goes something like this. What we're watching is a consolidation of power between the world's major superpowers. Each power is trying to lock down what it considers non-negotiables based on their geographies. Now, in this theory, Russia's priority is Ukraine because Ukraine sits between Russia and the sea. From Russia's perspective, losing Ukraine to NATO permanently locks them out of maritime access and leaves them strategically boxed in. China's priority is Taiwan. Taiwan is all about semiconductors, industrial supply chains, and control of the Western Pacific. From China's perspective, Taiwan is a very important core strategic asset. And the United States' priority is the Western Hemisphere. That's Venezuela. That's Cuba. That's really anything, any place where rival powers could build military bases, control resources, or reroute supply chains in a way that could threaten U.S. leverage. Okay, so then the next question is, what's next? And it seems like the next big move is most likely going to be Iran. Iran is important for a couple different reasons. First, Iran controls the northern edge of something called the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most important choke points in the entire world. Roughly 1/5 of all the oil in the world moves through that small stretch of water every single day. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iran, Qatar, all of their exports pass through that area. That gives Iran leverage way beyond its size, right? This is the classic Rimland power. Now, there is a second reason, though. Iran supplies huge amounts of cheap oil to China and Russia, which the US doesn't want. Now, all of this is done outside of US enforcement.
So if they go over there and set up a regime change, they can change those interests. See that? But see, it's not going to go over so well. It's not going to be that easy as they thought. Okay? And now you got to understand these nations are allies together. All right? You see the BRICS, okay, which I believe that's a front for military joint, but we'll see. Okay? And what countries, all right, what countries are in BRICS? What countries are in BRICS? Okay. Brazil, China, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, Iran, Russian Federation, South Africa, UAE. See that? Which, they're basically aligning together to operate and trade outside of the dollar, which is a lot of the issues you see happening, with America, with, like Venezuela, there was oil being traded outside of the dollar. So they go and set up a regime change. And now, the lady who basically took over is saying, America can now make a lot of money off of oil, yada, yada, yada. It's the same play, but it's not going to go so well with Iran. Okay. And we're witnessing the fall of Babylon the Great. It's dominance in the earth. All right. And the elites have their hands in all of this, but they're ultimately controlled by the Heavenly Father as well.
That weakens U.S. sanction power. And it makes China more independent of the U.S. than the U.S. wants. It's not just China. Iran also coordinates closely with Russia, especially since 2022. Iran supplies drones and weapons and all sorts of things that the U.S. doesn't like. And then, of course, there's reason number 3, which is the elephant in the room, which is Israel. Iran's threat to Israel is one of the most important reasons that the United States treats Iran differently from almost everybody else. Israel is very important to the U.S. because Israel is also one of the biggest buyers of U.S. military technologies. And it's also a proxy of security in the Middle East. So it's almost like the U.S. can defend its interests in the Middle East without actually physically being there. So Iran fits perfectly into everything that we talked about. It uses Rimland geography to threaten energy. It supplies oil to adversaries like China and Russia. It goes around the settlement network, which is the US dollar. It pressures an ally. And Iran's interests were also present in Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons, but more than likely, this theory says Iran is next for the US, Taiwan is next for China, and of course, Ukraine might fall to Russia.
And then all-out war is coming.
Now, none of this guarantees that's what happens next.
And eventually that is what's going to happen, okay? Because prophecy says it. As a matter of fact, let's get the book of 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter, all right? In the 28th verse, okay? a horrible vision and the appearance thereof from the east, wherein the nations of the dragons of Arabia, those Arab nations, okay, which we've witnessed the UAE, all right, basically withdraw from the alliance they had with the dollar for years, although moves that they make still benefit America. Okay, we're living in the times where these nations are going to just gather together to come up against her. Okay, the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as a wind upon the earth, that they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, which you can look up, all right, Carmania, it was a region, all right, in the territory of Iran. As a matter of fact, let's just look it up like this. Is Carmania in Iran? Yes. All right. Carmania is an ancient historical region that corresponds to modern day Kerman province in southeastern Iran. So the scriptures basically already show the vision that these Arab nations, all right, because when you look at the Third World War, that's ultimately what it's going to be. It's going to be a war of religions as well, to ultimately bring about a one world religion. You see, and we see the talking of, Islamic terror. We got to save the Christians. You got the small hat up in there with his, Judaism, which ultimately they're entering into the time. As a matter of fact, let's get this. Now, the priest Pashai just did a video on this that you should watch. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. It's a good video you should watch. Okay, a Sittings DMV. All right. One of the Great Millstone churches in Baltimore. The Union of Amalek and the False Prophet. All right. Christianity equals Armageddon. It's a good video, because basically, if you look at there's a video I had. All right, right here. Let me see if I can pull this up.
They go to Europe, I see the battle against us, and it's waged primarily by two forces, radical Shiite Islam and radical Sunni Islam. And the Sunni axis, led by the Muslim Brotherhood. And we are conscious of the fact that Christians are being persecuted across the Middle East, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Nigeria, in Turkey, and beyond. And also aware of the fact, as you are, that one country protects the Christian community, enables it to grow, defends it, and makes sure that it thrives. And that country is Israel. There is no other.
The Judeo-Christian alliance that has grown stronger and stronger over the past decades has truly been unprecedented. Let's listen to our Prime Minister, Mr. Bibi Netanyahu, as he addresses and welcomes and salutes the Judeo-Christian alliance by the Friends of Israel.
You are representatives of the Christian Zionists who made Jewish Zionism possible. It's hard for me to conceive the emergence of the Jewish state, the re-emergence of the Jewish state, without the support of Christian Zionists in the United States, also in Britain, but the main thrust was in the United States in the 19th century. So Christian Zionism facilitated the rise and success of Jewish Zionism. And it's been an enormous partnership since then.
And they've done that by the sword, which pretty much just forwarded British colonization and dominance in different regions of the world. And you see, they're going to use the talking point of, Christian Zionism, linking with, actual Zionism to fight a war against, all right, the Muslims. Okay, I believe there's a statement which pretty much they say Albert Pike made, but they're trying to debunk it, where he talks about this. As a matter of fact, let's look up, see if we can find that. All right, Albert Pike. Okay. See if we can see just the image of it. Let's see if we can find that. I don't. Damn it. Let me see if I can. Says it's on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook. See if we can pull it up like this. Now they say he said this in 1871. All right, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenter of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, all right, the Muslim Arabic, and the political Zionism of the state of Israel mutually destroy each other. And this is how they're going to usher in the Third World War. Now, when you look it up, a lot of people are saying he didn't really say this. You know how Esau, Edom works. But we know the Heavenly Father has ordained this via prophecy, and he's put it in their minds, the leaders of this world, to do it. As a matter of fact, let's get the book of Revelation, chapter 16 and 13. Okay, Armageddon. What's going to lead to Armageddon? It says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, which the modern day dragon is Babylon the Great. All right, Washington, D.C. Out of D.C., all right, is the, you know, pretty much capital of the United States. The dragon, the full revival of the Western Roman Empire. All right, but we know that they had their vassals. Okay, and out of the mouth of the beast. Okay, the beast system. All right, which we know is NATO. Okay, the EU. All right, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Okay, and pretty much some, you know, one other breakdown could be, you know, DC. Okay, the UK and the Vatican, which are 3 city-states, all right, which all ultimately work together for the purpose of doing the bidding of Satan in the planet Earth. But as you can see here, the dragon America, the beast, okay, which ultimately the British is up in that, and the false prophet, which ultimately is the Vatican, where ultimately the Roman Catholic Church, which Christianity falls under that. So you Christians walk around on this moral high ground, but your religion is just a child of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth into the kings of the earth, okay, to stir up war, to sit on a moral high ground and say we need to set up this, we need to do this, we need to do that, using the technology they've been blessed with now, which go forth into the kings of the earth and to the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of the Almighty power. Okay, so we can see the aspect of the false prophet. They're false. All right, you know, Christianity, which stems from the Roman Catholic Church. All right, at work as one of the means that we need to establish war, and this is what we're seeing. Let's see if I can bring that back up. Okay.
I've known some of you. Mike, how long have we known? Since we were teenagers, something like that? A long time.
46 years.
46 years. Since we were a little more than teenagers. But I can say that you have no better friends, and I mean that sincerely. You have stood by us through thick and thin, and now we're challenged by new challenges, but equally with new opportunities. We fought, as you know, a 7-front war, and we've come out in many ways victorious, but there's an 8th front, and that's the front for the hearts and minds of people, especially young people in the West, and for me especially in the United States, and for me especially on the conservative wing of the United States. And I think it's not just Israel's battle. I think it's our common Judeo-Christian civilization's battle.
See that?
I think we have to engage in that battle as forcefully, with as much resolution as we engage the other 7 fronts. I think it affects not only Israel, it affects America, it affects our alliance, it affects the future of Western civilization. And I don't think I'm exaggerating one bit. I have here my colleague, Israel's ambassador to the United States.
You can watch the rest of this video. Christian audience on edge as Netanyahu has dire warning about Islam in America. Okay, so you're getting ready to see an uptick of Islam, all right, being talked about in the news, and eventually they're gonna link, all right, you know, the Hebrew Israelites to that. See that? This is what the likes of Vocab Malone have been set up to do, to link the Hebrew Israelites to Islamic terror. All right, because there's getting ready to be some kind of event that takes place here on the soils of America that there's going to be blamed on, all right, the Islam. See that? Because Esau Edom couldn't invade Iran based upon, you know, the allegations that he had. So he had to, you know, so he's going to come another way. Something is getting ready to happen. And as you can see here, 2nd Esdras 15 and 28, behold, a horrible vision, the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia will come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth. And they all which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, Iran, raging in wrath, shall go forth as wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them. So they all going to join together and waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. The modern day Assyria is here in Babylon the Great. Okay, we have various scriptures to prove that. In prophecy, Egypt and Assyria speaks to Babylon the Great a lot of times. Okay, it says the land of Nimrod, it calls it in the book of Micah. All right, it says, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, because they're wild, they're savage. All right, and they shall turn themselves, conspiring together with great power to persecute them. Okay, then shall these be troubled and bled, and shall keep silence through their power and flee their media. Okay, so basically it says, and from the land of Assyria shall the enemy besiege them, and shall consume some of them, and in their hosts shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings. So there's a lot coming down the pipe, and 2026 could be the year where we see these things, but we see the moves being made through the Holy Spirit to complete all of this. Okay, it hasn't yet been fulfilled, but these things are on the way, all right, via these things that we're witnessing. Okay,
know the history of Iran at all. In 53, the United States, the CIA, they overthrew Mossadegh, who was democratically elected president, because just like Maduro in Venezuela, they wanted to keep the oil profits for their own people, and you can't do that. That's our oil. That's British Petroleum oil. That's Exxon oil. That's Chevron oil. And how dare you do that? So we overthrew him, and we installed a dictator. We installed, the United States installed the Shah of Iran, which was a very oppressive dictator. But people look, they go, look, they can wear miniskirts though. So that's how miniskirts equals freedom, even though they didn't have any. So then they finally overthrew him and installed the Shah of Iran. So installed the Ayatollah.
Because that's the thing. These Arab nations have strict culture, strict policies. Esau Edom will go and set up a coup, all right, and show particular women saying we're being oppressed. We can't do this. We can't do that. And he then goes to that country. All right, as it says here, let's get the book of Habakkuk, right? The book of Habakkuk, the first chapter. This is what he does, all right? Habakkuk 1 and 9, they shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind. They shall gather the captivity as the sand. They shall scoff at kings, and princes shall be a scorn unto them, and they shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. And this is speaking of the ancient Chaldeans. All right. Now, what I'm going to do real quick, let's ask chat. All right. Can you explain 1 and 10? What were the what were the Chaldeans doing? Stealing land? Let's just see what it says. All right. So yes, Habakkuk 1 and 10 is describing an imperial conquest. All right. And extraction, not random violence. The Chaldeans, all right, which the modern day Chaldeans is speaking to America, were seizing land, resources, labor, and power as an instrument of judgment. Okay. And the Lord set them up just like he set up Babylon the Great. Okay. This is, they shall scoff at kings. This is poetic warfare, but it's very concrete. The Chaldeans were a ruling class of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Who's the ruling class of the Neo-Babylonian Empire? All right. Who back then it was the Chaldeans. Who's the ruling class of Babylon the Great? The elites, the bankers. All right, which are a part of those 3 unclean frogs we just read about. It says a military imperial power, expansionist, known for siege warfare, known for deportations and tribute extractions. Okay, a hasty nation, as they were described. Okay, they scoff at kings. This means they did not respect existing sovereignty, and this is what they're doing over there in Iran. Why can't they have their sovereignty? Local rulers were humiliated, removed, or executed. The same thing happening now. Vassal kings were installed or tribute was imposed. They did this to Israel. When you look at after Josiah passed away, the majority of those kings who sat on the throne of David was set up by Egypt or Babylon. It says this political domination, all right, this is political domination, not battlefield victory. They deride every stronghold. All right, they deride, all right, or override fortified cities, resource centers, trade hubs. The Chaldeans specialize in siege warfare, cutting supply lines, starving cities into submission. And this is what they've been trying to do to Venezuela. Okay, but now there's other players that have come to where Venezuela can sort of keep their economy going through trading outside of the dollar. Okay. They shall heap up dust and take it. Siege ramps. Archaeology confirms Babylonians use earthen ramps to breach cities. Now they have technology like Palantir. Okay. All right. Basically seizing, possessing, and claiming as their own. And that's what they want to do with the oil in that region. Because the oil in that region is benefiting China and Russia above what, America's comfort level. And there's more, just like what's going on in Greenland. There's some hardcore resources that they have over in that land that are going to be beneficial to Babylon. So they confiscated farmland, seizure of gold, silver, and livestock, forced tribute, deportation or skilled labor, control of trade routes. See, this is ultimately what's going on, as we just showed you. All right. Iran has control of a very, very important route where oil is transported. All right. Hormuz. Okay. Where were we at? I think we were here. There's so much happening.
And that's why they have a theocracy now. It was back. It's what the CIA even terms themselves. It's called blowback, right? So we do that, and then we set the stage for a right-wing takeover. And so it's like when the Democrats get in bed with Wall Street and they do NAFTA, it sets a stage for a right-wing blowback, right? So because the workers have nowhere to go. Same things happens in places like Iran. And so now we come in and we're going to promise to bring them freedom. Well, the last time we brought the Iranians freedom, it was a dictator called the Shah of Iran, who everybody hated. So that we have no interest in democracy. In fact, we really prefer to have dictators. That's what the United States likes. They don't like democracy because dictators are easier to control, and that's what they really want. So that's just a little bit of the history that people, I think, need to understand about what's really happening and why the Iranian people are so against the United States. Although, let me just say this. The news media's pro-Iranian war propaganda has been off the hook from local media. I'm watching Channel 5 News here in Los Angeles, and they're going and they're interviewing people from Iran and how much this is the time that the Iranian people really need the United States to stand with the people of Iran. And that's the kind of...
Yeah, like this is an example right here. This just popped up. That's the spirit.
All right.
Okay.
It is 9 minutes after the top of the hour, and the president of Iran is warning the United States that any attacks on their supreme leader could constitute an all-out war, as President Trump calls for an end to the Ayatollah's reign.
So Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Ying's all over this. He joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Over the weekend, Iran's supreme leader continued to attack President Trump and the United States of America. The Ayatollah Khamenei addressed a crowd on Saturday that was chanting death to America and death to Israel as he called President Trump a criminal. The remarks, which were broadcast on state-controlled media, followed a slew of X posts where he falsely claimed the U.S. orchestrated the mass killing and chaos in Iran.
We consider the U.S. president a criminal for the casualties, damages, and the slander he inflicted on the Iranian nation.
In an interview with Politico, President Trump responded saying it's time to look for new leadership in Iran. And on Sunday, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian warned that any aggression against the supreme leader would be considered an all-out war. As the country's leadership is discussing more about the protests, new video provided to Fox News by a source in Tehran shows Iranians gathered outside of a morgue demanding answers about their loved ones. The Iranian regime is now...
And then you'll see something like this, and it'll be completely something old or completely different situation. But see, this is how they use propaganda. Now they're saying they're admitting, all right, that they killed thousands of their protesters. They're blaming America for setting up false flag scenarios and coups, all right, to that basically led to a lot of the deaths. So you don't know what to believe, but we know Esau Edom is the devil. Now, Iran is not this innocent, bystander. All of these heathen are wicked, all right, but as you can see, the people are falling for it. Get rid of this killer. Now, you got a murderer over here running your country. All right. Just an example. Okay.
News segments that without any commentary from anybody on the other side giving a pushback to that, they just put that complete propaganda out there. And it's like, really, the people who are from Iran want the United States to bomb the shit out of Iran? I don't think so. Come see me live on tour.
All right. I have to check out some of his stand-up. I've never seen it. But interesting times, man. Let's see. It was another video I had. I'll get into the beast hating the whore later. Myron had a good one. Let's see if I can find that. Give me 1 second, Salakia. Oh, here we go.
Us invading Venezuela confirmed the hypocrisy and confirmed what they've been saying. So what comes off is supposed to be a show of strength actually was a declaration of weakness because we had to invade them versus exercising some level of diplomacy or trade.
Fair use. Let's see here. 2020 invasion, Venezuela falls. Let's start here.
Let's talk about Iran. Because after Venezuela was toppled by U.S. Special Forces, the Chinese are smart. Guess who they started buying more oil from? The Iranians. Right? Now, here's the thing, and this is where we're in a very weird spot. If the Chinese continue to purchase oil from Iran, because remember, what other country is sanctioned to hell where the Chinese can get cheap oil? Well, Venezuela's gone. What's left? Iran. But here's the issue. As we know, the United States, alongside the Mossad, Israeli government, are astroturfing and trying to destroy the Iranian government. Manufacturing these protests with their dollar, whatever it may be. Right? If the Chinese continue to purchase Iranian oil, at some point, it's going to create jobs and it's going to bring prosperity back to Iran. Their money's going to come back up. Now, here's the other problem. That money, right, that Iran makes, guess where it's going to go? It's going to go to defense. And we know when it comes to Iranians in defense, they're going to manufacture more ballistic missiles.
Yep.
They're going to purchase Russian weaponry, air defense, all that shit. So now it puts us on an even tighter timeline. Because now that Venezuela's out, another reason, too, why the Israelis were really on board with taking out Venezuela is because, number one, Venezuela didn't recognize Israel. Number two, it would limit Iran's strength and shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. For those of you that don't know, the Strait of Hormuz, and I'll show you guys this real quick on the map. The Strait of Hormuz, guys, right here, okay? This area right here. So here's a map of the Middle East, right? Is this little strait right here, okay? Now, this strait, something like 30% of the world's oil goes through here, okay? If this were to be shut down, we're talking about a big problem economically, okay? Now, to soften the blow from the strategy that Iran might employ in the course of an existential crisis, a serious war, right? Because they obviously reserve the right to shut down this strait. Having access to Venezuelan oil will be great, right? We'll have access to Venezuelan oil. Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, woo. But here's the problem that they didn't realize. The Chinese, right, are going to buy the oil from Iran instead. And that money is going to be used to beef up their military. Iran makes their own ballistic missiles. They have very smart scientists. That's why it always kills them. But they got a lot of them. Okay? So what this basically done, what this has done, this has created almost a time clock, a ticking time clock. Because Iran is weak now. Yeah, the Chinese are going to buy more oil from them, but it's going to take time for them to start getting the money and everything else like that. So this gives the Israelis a tighter timeline to make anything happen. And this is what I'm talking about, guys, right? This is where we need to have a very difficult discussion. This, my friends, is what happens when you live in a multipolar world. Okay? The United States is no longer the only global superpower.
Nope.
Okay? The disparity that we once enjoyed between these countries is pretty much dissipated. We are not that far ahead of China and Russia to the point where we can tell them what to do. And Putin talked about this back in, I think, Munich in 2007, of being in a multipolar world. It's here, boys. It's here. And for some odd reason, American political commentators refuse to accept the fact that we live in a multipolar world. If you truly love America, you need to be able to understand the truth and the reality of where we stand. And where we stand nowadays is we are not that more advanced than China and Russia. They have nuclear weapons, they have a capable military, they have huge militaries, and our hegemon status, especially with our financial institutions, does not have the same, how do I say this, asphyxiation effect that it used to have. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, China, all these countries have proven, right, and BRICS in general, that there is a rising alternative. And this is the biggest reason why I don't like the Venezuelan invasion. I don't know if you guys noticed, but a bunch of countries came forward to condemn the United States for that. Okay? And the reason why they condemn the United States is because we are now hypocrites. Did we not just lecture Russia for what? Oh, 4 years now, going on 4 years. They invaded back in 2022. It's been 4 years, chap. Did we not lecture them that you cannot invade a country and take away their sovereignty? We did the same shit. Article 2, we did the same shit. So who are we to lecture Russia? Have we not been talking about China better not invade Taiwan? Who are we to now tell China they can't invade Taiwan? And what we've basically done is we have validified and vindicated both Putin and Ping, leaders of Russia and China respectively. They've been talking about this for years, saying that we are bullies. We use our financial power and overrepresentation in our military to bully people, sanction people, to control governments, to run coups, and we're hypocrites. That's what they've been saying about us for years. Us invading Venezuela confirmed the hypocrisy and it confirmed what they've been saying. So guess what's going to happen? Countries are going to slowly de-dollarize. Countries are going to slowly start to buy more gold.
Yep, and this is Habakkuk. Let's get the book of Habakkuk. All right. Chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2 and 5. Yea, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. I mean, just based on what we've just went into in this lesson, he don't stay his ass at home. He's all over the world. Who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all of these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe unto him that increaseth in that which is not his? How long? Okay, and him that ladeth himself with thick clay. The thick clay is that debt, all right, the petrodollar. And now nations are looking for a way around that petrodollar, which is causing America to lose its force, its dominance, because the real force behind the petrodollar is the sword. Now all of these nations are sworded up. We know Babylon is the dominant on paper, but if all of these nations come and put their missiles together, right? Jeremiah 51 and 44, I will punish Baal in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth all that he swallowed up. And the nations shall not flow together anymore unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. So the nations are looking for a way around Babylon's influence. See, shall not they rise up and suddenly, all right, Habakkuk 2 and 7, shall they not rise up suddenly and shall bite thee? Okay, and ultimately trading outside of the dollar is starting, all right, to stress America out. Okay. And awake that shall vex thee, and they shall be booties unto them. Ultimately, you're getting ready to be a spoil, because thou hast spoiled many nations. The remnant of all the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land and of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe to him that covet an evil covetousness unto his house. See, and this is an evil covetousness, man. Okay.
Countries are slowly going to try to distance themselves from SWIFT. Countries are slowly going to start doing secret partnerships with China and Russia, because we've kind of exposed ourselves where if you don't comply with what we do, we're going to invade you anyway. So now holding US dollars is a liability, not an asset. Now having oil and not doing transactions in the US dollar is a liability, not an asset. Now, if we don't follow what the United States says, we can get kicked off SWIFT. Russia has shown that you don't need to be under SWIFT to be successful. Venezuela tried to show that if you have a lot of oil, you can go ahead and not.
And SWIFT I know exactly what it is. It's basically in order to trade in particular resources, you have to basically pay a debt to SWIFT, I believe. What is SWIFT? I forget. Okay, SWIFT can stand for Society of Worldwide International Interbank Financial Telecommunications, a secure messaging network for banks to send payment instructions globally, and a popular high-level programming language applied by Apple for developing apps. All right. Let's see here. Let's go here. How is SWIFT? Yep. It has become one of the most powerful tools for forcing payments for resources in the modern world. It works through control of access, not direct coercion. Okay? And you can look it up more. All right? But this is another way that America, all right, keeps their hand, all right, in transactions. Okay? Let's see. Over 11,000 banks in 200 plus countries. The elites. It does not move money, but without it, cross-border payments become slow, risky, or impossible. Why SWIFT matters for resources. Most global resources are traded in US dollars through international banks with letters of credit, insurance, and shipping guarantees. All of that depends on SWIFT messages. If you can't use SWIFT, you can't reliably get paid. You can't ensure shipments. Buyers hesitate to trade with you. See that? How SWIFT enforces payment resources. Access equals legitimacy. If a country or company is connected to SWIFT, buyers trust payments will clear. Sellers trust money will arrive. Shipping and insurance companies cooperate. Okay, and you can go more into that. But this benefits Babylon. So as he's saying, let's rewind selector.
Slowly going to try to distance themselves from SWIFT. Countries are slowly going to start doing secret partnerships with China and Russia because we've kind of exposed ourselves where if you don't comply with what we do, we're going to invade you anyway. So now holding US dollars is a liability, not an asset. Now having oil and not doing transactions in the US dollar is a liability, not an asset. Now, if we don't follow what the United States says, we can get kicked off SWIFT. Russia has shown that you don't need to be under SWIFT to be successful. Venezuela tried to show that if you have a lot of oil, you can go ahead and not be under the US dollar system and the hegemon. US said nope, and invaded. So what comes off as supposed to be a show of strength actually was a declaration of weakness because we had to invade them versus exercising some level of diplomacy or trade. We are invading, doing regime change wars, putting people in sanctions. Meanwhile, what is China doing? China is building. China's creating infrastructure. China's investing. So they look like a better world partner than we do. And these are ugly truths that American political commentators don't want to acknowledge. Oh, you're a China puppet. Oh, you're a Putin puppet, blah, blah, blah. Guys, this is the reality. We are in a multipolar world. And right now, it looks, for a lot of countries, that it's better to work with China than us. China has been in a war since 1979. We've been in several. When's the last coup that China ran to destabilize the government? I can't even think of one, but we've done several, maybe 50 plus. At least it's not public. I'm sure China does a whole bunch of bullshit behind the scenes. And the thing that pisses me off is that China's a corrupt government. They're communists, they're evil, they suppress their own people, they repress their own people, they're up. But they look like the better global partner. Also, China doesn't give what you do. Hey, we just want to do trade with you. That's it. We don't care if you got a democracy, we don't care if you're a dictator, whatever. We just want to do business with you. We don't go.
Yeah, America wants to control everything.
That's attractive to a lot of countries out there. Oh, you're not going to meddle in our affairs? You're not going to intervene? You just want to do business? Awesome, let's do it. Meanwhile, us, okay, we'll do business with you, but you got to use dollars. You got to have a democracy. You got to do this. You got to do that. If you're not going to do this, then we need you to do this. Guys, if you're an up-and-coming country, who do you want to work with? You want to work with the United States? Or you going to want to work with China or Russia? You can't just invade every BRICS country. Now it's about influence. And we're slowly losing influence. And I wish more American geopolitical commentators talked about this, because this is a problem. Okay? We can't just be sitting here like America and be and not be aware of what the f is going on. It's like, bro, we got to understand our adversaries. We got to know our adversaries. We have to know ourselves. The art of war. Know thy enemy and know thyself. Bruh, this is what China's doing.
Well, the Lord's put a reprobate spirit on the leaders, and it's going to lead to their demise. Okay? This is the book of Nahum 3:15. This is what happened to ancient Nineveh. All right? There shall the fire devour thee, the sword shall cut thee off, it shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm, make thyself as many as the locust. All right? Economic decay. Okay? It says, thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. All right? Through control. The cankerworm spoileth and flieth away. Okay, we're representing decay, eventually death. Okay, it says, thy crowned. Let's see here. Let's see. What am I? Okay. Oh, okay. Here's the point. Let me just jump here. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear of the brood of thee shall clap thy hands over thee. For upon whom have not thy wickedness passed continually? So all of these nations, they're fed up with Babylon. Not to mention what's going on with Greenland, and now Trump imposing tariffs on his own allies, which we'll get into in another lesson. But I believe that's all I had.
China is doing deals by investing and helping create infrastructure and diplomacy. What are we doing? Invading countries, running coups, destabilizing, doing regime change wars, and we're being hypocrites. So we are absolutely losing influence. And not only are we losing influence in South America. What, 54, I think, out of like 55 Latin American countries? Or no, that's Africa. Africa's working with China heavy. China's building all types of infrastructure in Africa. But in Latin America, lots of countries are doing trade with China. The Monroe Doctrine is a joke. China's been in South America forever. I could have told you all this back in 2018. They're all over the Bahamas. They're all over Jamaica. Go to Jamaica. Anyone go to Jamaica? People say, oh, the Monroe Doctrine. You clearly haven't been to the South America. You haven't been in the Caribbean. There's Chinese all over Jamaica, bro.
So all of these moves being made by America is only, making China and Russia look like the better option to ally themselves with.
The Iranians have been doing this for some time now. They're fed up. This isn't the first time Israel has organized large-scale demonstrations.